Football is motherfucking bike, baby. And in that game, if Travis Kelce literally has one single yard, you're a winner on Underdog Fantasy because they just want people onto the platform. Go on to Underdog Fantasy. You will get the Travis Kelce half a yard square. And when you get onto the app and you download it using promo code BDGE, you deposit $10. Use the code BDGE. You're going to get a deposit bonus. You're going to get that Travis Kelce free square. And you are getting our BDGE rankings on our website for the entire year. Waiver wire rankings, weekly rankings, dynasty rankings, private Q&A every single Saturday where you can ask me my sit-start questions. We've been yapping for the entire summer, but let's yap one more time before the season kicks off. Today's video, we're going to highlight players or teams' positions that we should be looking to trade for in the near future. And the basis of this video is going to be looking at fantasy football playoff schedules. Okay, so we're going to be looking at position groups by specific teams that have either the best or worst fantasy football playoff schedule. So most people in your league are not looking this far down the road. They're thinking about like, oh, this guy is a fantastic pick. This guy is talented. This guy is the GOAT. They're not thinking about what happens when weeks 14, 15, 16, 17 roll around and you've got to play against Cleveland and then Baltimore and then Kansas City. And then you've got problems and then you bounce from your playoffs. So that's what this video is going to do. It's going to prepare you. So maybe you just keep this in the bookmark section. Maybe in week 3, 5, 7, you come back and you look at this video and you start trading for or away the dudes on this list. Let's get into the first position group. We have the quarterback / pass catchers of the New Orleans Saints. The way I broke this down was I was trying to get some information from a bunch of different sources. So it's not necessarily just looking at last year's fantasy points allowed to a specific position, because I don't think that's predictive. I don't really think that's helpful with all the turnover and new pieces on both offense and defense, etc. So the Saints play the Giants in week 14, the Commanders in week 15, the Packers in week 16, and Vegas in week 17. So what I did was combine some grades from PFF, like the coverage grade and the pass rush grade, and then I looked at Mike Clay does great power rankings per position groups on ESPN each offseason. So I looked at cornerback rankings, safety rankings, coverage grade, pass rush grade, and then just EPA per pass allowed last year. Obviously, there's no black and white formula for this. There's no like, this is great, this is terrible, but we can start to get a big picture here. And you just see a lot of green all over this. Like New York, Washington, Las Vegas, they all have terrible secondaries. They, for the most part, have pretty bad pass rushes outside of the Raiders. They allow a lot of production to the passing game. So this might put someone like Derek Carr in a super flex league on your radar. This might maybe start to make you look at a dude like Spencer Rattler to throw onto the bench if you're in a super flex league. This will definitely make you start to look at guys like Chris Olave as a trade target, or Rashid Shaheed if he's on the waiver wire deeper into the year, something like that. That is where I would start to keep my eye on players like, because the New York, Washington, Green Bay, which should be a very high scoring game, and then the Raiders, of course. You got 3 paper soft matchups and then one where you're probably going to have to keep up. So the Saints schedule in the fantasy playoffs is legit. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons group. All right, quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends, however you want to break it down. And this feels like, I hate that I'm saying this on NFL kickoff day because that means no fucking way. But they get Minnesota in week 14. They get Las Vegas in week 15. They get New York in week 16. They get Washington in week 17. There's arguably not an easier schedule to end the year than the Falcons have for, honestly, both running backs and receivers. The Saints have a very similar schedule. We kind of have it flipped because obviously in division, we play a lot of the same teams over and over again. So you're talking about Minnesota's week 14. That's probably the toughest defensive matchup they have here in terms of the secondary, but that's also week 14. So it's probably not actually your fantasy playoffs. When you get into it, it's the Raiders, the Giants, and Washington. The secondaries of the Giants and Washington are the worst in the NFL. Drake London might actually win championships this year. I'm scared to take him. I'm scared about everything to do with the Atlanta Falcons, but Drake London could single-handedly win championships. This is obviously great for Kyle Pitts. This is obviously great for Kirk Cousins. Down the stretch, the Atlanta Falcons have players that you want on your team badly come the fantasy playoff. The next position group we got is the Indianapolis Colts. Pass catchers, Anthony Richardson, wide receivers, tight ends, whatever. So they have their bye in week 14. You hate to see the late bye, but every team's got a bye, all right? Week 14, you got the bye. So that's the real negative part here. But week 15, they play Denver. Week 16, they play Tennessee. And week 17, they play the New York Giants. Now, I will say, Denver, like everyone looks at Denver and they see Patrick Surtain, and he's a monster, obviously. He's one of the best defenders in the NFL. He is about all they have on that defense, okay? EPA per pass, they were 29th in the NFL last year. Their coverage grade was 32nd in the NFL last year. Their safety rank going into the year is 31st. Their cornerback is 16, literally only because they have Pat. They play against Tennessee, who had really bad grades last year, and I think their pass rush is going to be bad again this year. They obviously went out and signed L'Jarius Sneed, and they signed a lot of good secondary pieces. So they're going to be a much better team on the defense in terms of their secondary this year, but this is also an in-division game. Indy plays at home, obviously a very fast-paced offense. It's a good field in December to play, so you don't have to worry about the weather, and Tennessee's going to be high-paced as well. So you talk about two teams that are moving fast and probably a lot of passing going on in the game, and then again, it just feels like I just looked at the Giants schedule, and basically anyone that they were playing weeks 15, 16, 17, you got onto this list. So the Colts end with the New York Giants in week 17. You couldn't ask for a better way to go out in your fantasy championship, right? Like the Giants secondary, they lose Xavier McKinney at safety. Deontay Banks was a cool rookie, but that's about all they have in the secondary. Mike Clay has them ranked 32nd, dead last in the league in both cornerback and safety ranks. It's not a good look out there. So fantasy leagues are going to get spicy this time of the year. Speaking of that, we got a movie going live today. We did an in-office draft between the BDGE team members and the Snapback team members. It's a 12-man league. The vlog is an absolute movie. Joey is a wizard with this shit. I am going to throw a promo up for it. And if this is something that you want to follow along for the year, we started a brand new YouTube channel. I'm going to link it down below. Subscribe there.
I just wanted to say that this is going to be the greatest, most highly anticipated fantasy football league the world will ever know. And it's not going to be because of a $5K prize. It won't be because of the last place punishment. Because of the dudes in this room right here and the journeys that we go through, all right? Underdogs making a miraculous comeback, friends becoming enemies and actually hating each other, all right? This league is going to be as great as we make it in here. And other than that, I wish you all the worst of luck. I hope you all fail.
I just call designers up. I free 99. Call your baby mama up. Yep, I 99. I just bought designer kits. Yeah, Roddy poppin'. I just put some.
All right, so that vlog is over an hour and 15 minutes. It is incredible, and we're going to be doing hour-long podcasts documenting and following the league because we're all in the actual office multiple times per week. So again, if you want to follow along with it in our high-stakes leagues, $5,000 to first place on the line, subscribe to your Idiot League Mates channel, please. Now, when we flip the script and we look at teams with bad playoff schedule, it doesn't get any harder than what the Miami Dolphins have to play against in December. I mean, starting in week 14, you've got the New York Jets. Week 15, you are at Houston, who are, they're an emerging defense who by the end of this year are going to be a really, really good defense. Week 16, they get San Francisco. Week 17, they're at Cleveland, and that's scary because Cleveland's cold, and Tua doesn't play very well in the cold at the end of the year. So you're looking at this chart, and it is just tomato and ketchup just squeezed all over it, okay? This is a really difficult end of the year schedule, and I'm not really like overly concerned, I guess, with a guy like Tyreek Hill to do anything he wants to anyone. But like Tua, we know the whole narrative around Tua is that he struggles against really good teams and really high quality passing defenses, especially at the end of the year. So this feels a little bit problematic, and I could understand like if Tua or Jalen Waddle get off to a really hot start in the beginning of the year without people really noticing their end of the season schedule. Maybe you want to flip a dude like Jalen Waddle in week 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that, because this playoff schedule at the end of the year is fucking brutal. Going off that note, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, I've been pretty high on a lot of the players on Pittsburgh, not necessarily the passing offense, I guess. I definitely like George Pickens, and I like Pat Freiermuth as a later round tight end, but their schedule is really tough in December as well. In week 14, they play against Cleveland, one of the best defenses in the NFL. They're at Philadelphia in week 15. That's a really hard environment to play in. And obviously, Philadelphia's defense kind of sputtered at the end of last year. I think that was a little bit of a product of their offense, needing a lot more help as well and them kind of coming down. But I think most things will bounce back. They went really heavy into investing in their secondary in the draft, first round, second round picks, both cornerbacks. So I think they'll be a lot better by the second half of the year. You're at Baltimore in week 16, and then you're playing the Chiefs in week 17. So there are no easy games from week 14 to 17 for the Steelers and their passing offense. That could be a little bit lights out season for the Steelers. Now we're going to shift over to the running back position. As we move to the running back position, we switched some of the metrics a little bit to give you a better idea of things that matter for opposing running backs. So you'll see IDL rank, which is interior defensive lineman. That's probably the key indicator of whether or not it's easy to run. If they have a really good interior defensive line, like Detroit is going to have DJ Reader and Alan McNeil, and those are two of the best interior defensive linemen, especially against the run. By like week 8-10, when this defense is clicking, you're not going to be able to start a running back against the Detroit Lions in fantasy. Mark my fucking words on that. So we have interior defensive line rank, we have off-ball linebacker rank, their run defensive grade, their rush defensive grade from PFF last year, and then EPA per rush. So those are the metrics for running backs. And one of the better schedules is the New England Patriots. And I'm not really in on Ramondre Stevenson, but this has me maybe thinking twice about it. They do have a week 14 bye, so that's obviously a very big negative, fighting to get into the playoffs. But week 15, they're playing Arizona. Week 16, they're playing Buffalo. Week 17, they're playing the LA Chargers. Now, I think one difficult thing to look at when it comes to the running back schedule for the Patriots is like, we don't really expect them to ever be in game scripts where they're like dominating and they are giving their running backs 30, 33 carries in the game. So like that's the overall negative here, I think. But just looking at schedules per se, Arizona is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Buffalo is, they're good. They're solid in most aspects of their defense, but they lost a lot of players this offseason. Most of their guys either became old and they had to cut them, or they traded away, or they moved on, or they have guys that are injured, like the Matt Milanos. By week 16, he might be okay, but their run D was really, really bad last year. Their pass D was a little bit better. We'll see how they turn out. I think this could be a defense that can kind of flutter and finish anywhere between, 14 and like 22. So it could be a bad defense by the end of the year. The Chargers have just been a perennially bad run defense for quite a while. Let's go over to our next team, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, when you look at the chart, it doesn't look great in terms of the colors, but when we think about the teams, it is the Raiders in week 14, it's the Chargers in week 15, Dallas in week 16, Carolina in week 17. So I think 3 of the 4 games, Vegas, LA, Carolina, you expect the Bucs to be in those games for sure and be able to lean on their running backs if they. Las Vegas will obviously be a pretty damn good defense overall, like adding Christian Wilkins to the interior of the line. But again, week 14 is not probably your guys' playoffs. It's just a game that you'll need to use to get into the playoffs. But one of the things that I like about both Bucs running backs, right? Like this goes for Rashad White, but it also goes for Bucky Irving if Rashad White is hurt by this time of the year, is both of them are really good in the pass game. So with the Bucs, Raiders are tough, week 14. You move over to the Chargers, and the Chargers, again, have just like been an abysmal run defense for the most part over the last like half decade. Dallas is a great defense, but they struggle against the run. That is like their weakness. They are really good against the pass because they've got really solid cornerback, Deron Bland and Diggs and all that. And Micah Parsons obviously gets to the quarterback in like half a second. But against the run, teams can run the shit out of the ball against them. So Dallas is a sneaky run funnel type of defense. And you have Carolina, 32nd in EPA per rush. Now, their individual players are not bad. I don't think their individual defense is that bad. I do think they lack a lot of skill now at this point. They let go of Brian Burns. And again, they're a team that like they're never going to be favored in games. They're never going to be highly favored. So the other running back is never going to be game scripted out. You're never going to have to like air it out 45 times against the Carolina Panthers. Like you can remain giving the ball over and over and over again. If you get up by a touchdown, 2 touchdowns, it's going to go into the belly of your back consistently over the second half. So Vegas, Chargers, Dallas, Carolina, I think it's a really good schedule for Bucs. This is probably my favorite one, and I have a feeling Kenneth Walker is going to end up being on a lot of my trade target videos throughout the season because they get Arizona in week 14, who have the 31st ranked interior defensive line, 28th off-ball linebacker. Their run D grade and EPA per rush were both bottom 5 in the NFL. They get Green Bay. Now, Green Bay has a pretty good interior defensive line, Kenny Clark and some other players like that, Rashawn Gary on the edge. Overall, they were not a great run defense when you look at everything holistic. You get Minnesota, whose team is kind of in shambles as well, and their run defense is pretty bad. They're 26th in terms of interior defensive lineman rank, 24th in off-ball linebacker rank. Their run D grade last year was 20th, and then you get to Chicago, where Chicago, everyone thinks that like Chicago is going to be this up-and-coming defense, and they played well down the stretch last year, a lot to do with Montez Sweat coming over, but they use a lot of their heavy investments that they could have used into their defense on the offense, right? Caleb Rome, etc. So their interior defensive line rank is 28th in the NFL. Their run D grade last year was 30th. Now, I do think the one thing that you probably have that goes for them in a positive this year is that they'll probably put up a lot more points. So opposing teams won't be able to establish their ground game at a really high level. But overall, this is like a sneaky, really good end of the year schedule for Seattle, for Kenneth Walker, and he's someone that I think can go kind of bonkers over the last 4 weeks of the season. On the flip side, when we get to bad schedules, let's turn it around to the Bears, and they are in hell here as it relates to run defenses. So they get Detroit twice. This one I'm gonna highlight over the last 5 weeks of the season because there's a very tough stretch down the remainder. So they get Detroit in weeks 13 and 16, and as I said, they have the third-ranked interior defensive line. DJ Reader, Alan McNeil is going to be a problem. Aiden Hutchinson, their off-ball linebacker, 16th, but I think as Jack Campbell becomes more and more of a player, that'll get better. Their run D grade last year was 5th in the NFL without DJ Reader. Their EPA per rush was 2nd. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was very hard to run against Detroit last year. So that is a problem. They get San Francisco, and they are at San Francisco in week 14. Just always going to be a sound fucking defense that's tough to, you're not going to be able to establish the run because San Francisco scores so many damn points that the running backs become a secondary thought to opposing off. Then you have Minnesota in week 15 at Minnesota. That is without a doubt the easiest match on their schedule. Week 15, you get a pretty light game against the Vikings. So that's like the one ray of shining light there. But week 17, you move back to Seattle, and you want to talk about an interior defensive line that is going to be a monster. And then you add Byron Murphy in the draft to shore up that interior. Like, they're going to be really, really hard to run against as well. So this stretch of the last 5 weeks is sneaky really tough for the Bears and guys like DeAndre Swift and the last team, which I will get to in a second. But again, I just want to shout out, like, we worked really, really hard on the draft day vlog. So please, if you want to follow that along, make sure you don't forget to do so and subscribe to your Idiot League Mates YouTube channel right after this video. And then, of course, go check out Underdog Fantasy. Download the app. That will also be linked down below. Use promo code BDGE. When you deposit $10 or more, you will get the Travis Kelce free square of 0.5 yards tonight. They have about 1,000 promos running for tonight. They have discounted lines. They have vulture protection, which is like if you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson scores a touchdown, then you're actually safe. Like, your bet does not lose. It's incredible what they got going on over at Underdog Fantasy. And like I said, if you use our code, you will get access to our Big Dog membership for the entire year for free, just for depositing on Underdog Fantasy. And if you're doing best ball drafts, I know you got about 4 hours left. Don't draft New York Giants running backs because they have an incredibly difficult run schedule down the stretch. They have the Saints in week 14. They have Baltimore in week 15. They are at Atlanta in week 16. And then they are playing against the Colts in week 17. Atlanta was the #1 ranked run defense last year in terms of EPA per rush. We have a great interior defensive line. We get Grady Jarrett back. Our run D grade was #2. The Indianapolis Colts with DeForest Buckner, like, their interior defensive line is a nightmare for opposing teams. Baltimore is obviously always a fucking sick defense. And then New Orleans. I don't know what New Orleans is going to be, but they're typically a very good defense. But again, that's week 14, so it's not necessarily your fantasy schedule for the most part. But the Giants have to go against Baltimore, Atlanta, Indy. So good to know that, like, this is another reason why I think Devin Singletary was a dude that I was not looking to invest in and draft heavily during draft season, only because I don't think he had staying power. And if he did stay, he's got a tough end of the season schedule. All right. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. This was the last video of pre-NFL, but then we start ripping, right? We did our week 1 rankings yesterday, both wide receiver and running back. So if you missed that, I will link it. The schedule starting next week, every single Monday, as I did throughout August, I will be recapping every game that happens in the NFL. Those will be live streamed. So you got to make sure you're subscribed and you got notifications turned on to let you know when I go live. It's usually going to be around 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. Every Tuesday morning will be the waiver wire video. Every Wednesday, we will have a running back rankings of our top 40 running back rankings debate and then a top 40 wide receiver rankings debate. Every Thursday, we'll be talking about trades, trade targets, the guys that are most traded in fantasy right now. We'll kind of give our take, buy, sell, hold on those players. I don't know what I'm going to be doing Friday yet, if we have anything planned. And then Saturday will be a private Q&A live stream for those y'all that are Big Dog members. You could sign up on bdge.co to become a Big Dog member. But again, the cheapest way to do it, to get the entire season's worth for just $10, is to go to underdogfantasy.com or download the Underdog Fantasy app using our code BDGE. And again, we will be putting out hour-long podcasts covering that league on the Your Idiot League Mates YouTube channel. So if you're looking for as much possible fantasy and just football content in general, this is the place to make it happen.